Many scholars and theologians, as well as many artists, argue that any theological discussion of human creativity is incomplete if only viewed through the lens of creation and Imago Dei. And the missing Christological piece to the equation is the Incarnation. And the Incarnation focuses on making present and visible the realm of the invisible Spirit. And essentially, the Incarnation offers a redemptive quality to the theology of human creativity and helps answer the question, so what? Why bother with the arts when there is so much pain and so much suffering in the world? The word incarnation is Latin and means embodied in flesh. And the glory of God was most beautifully embodied in the life of Jesus at his birth, transfiguration, death, and resurrection. And the loving and self-giving nature of God is so deep and so profound that God shared divine glory with humanity through the incarnation of Jesus. And through the incarnation, God was able to know and be known by humanity. The Incarnation illustrates the dual nature of Jesus as both fully divine and fully human. And since Jesus is God, he speaks and acts on behalf of God because he is the very image of God. And to witness Jesus act and speak is to see and hear God. And in the same way, Jesus is also fully human and also represents humanity. Jesus is simultaneously the most mysteriously other and the most down-to-earth of human beings. And the Incarnation of Jesus exquisitely integrates both the divine and human natures into one being, and he is able to perform all the duties of co-creator given to the divine image bearers at the beginning, because he is the divine image. By acting on behalf of God and humans, Jesus was able to accomplish on this earth what had previously eluded humanity when the Genesis project failed. Genesis 3 illustrates both the rejection of God's authority by Adam and Eve and their rejection of their roles delegated to them as royal stewards. And even though God had created the perfect co-creators to steward and rule on God's behalf, humanity turned from that original design, and disobedience and sin entered the world. Humanity blew it. Humans were gifted and commissioned by God to carry out the duties of co-creators, but they blundered. However, God found the true image bearer in Jesus, and all of creation is now called to become like Jesus and be reimagined into his likeness. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, the Apostle Paul says, "All of us, with unveiled faces, seeing the glory of the Lord as though reflected in a mirror, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another." Because of the life and mission of Jesus, we have the opportunity to be utterly transformed into a new creation, just as the clay is molded and shaped by the hands of the potter. And it is our honor to find our place in the world and to be transformed into the image and likeness of Christ, and to reflect the love and grace and mercy of God to the whole world as God makes all things new. We know that the creation of the universe began with art, and Genesis says that God saw that it was good. The material world is good. And through the incarnation of Jesus, that material world is being redeemed. God makes good stuff, and he likes what he made. The physical world has an eternal and redeemed worth because of the incarnation of Jesus. And the invisible God becomes alive to our senses through beauty and aesthetics. And it is the richest concept embodying the glory of God. And it is visible near the surface when we take time to look. Elizabeth Barrett Browning once wrote, "Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round it and pluck blackberries and daub their natural faces unaware." When we wake up and pay attention, we realize how thin the veil really is between the material and the spiritual world. When an artist paints a picture, creates a sculpture, writes a poem, or composes a song, she is engaged in an incarnational activity. She's bringing to life concepts and ideas, wisdom, faith, stories, and hope through a creative act. In her book, Walking on Water, Madeline L'Engle explains it like this. To paint a picture, or to write a story, or to compose a song is an incarnational activity. The artist is a servant who is willing to be a birth giver. In a very real sense, the artist, male or female, should be like Mary, who, when the angel told her that she was to bear the Messiah, was obedient to the command. Obedience is an unpopular word nowadays, but the artist must be obedient to the work, whether it be a symphony, a painting, or a story for a small child. I believe that each work of art, whether it is a work of great genius or something very small, comes to the artist and says, "Here I am, enflesh me, give birth to me." And the artist either says, "My soul doth magnify the Lord," and willingly becomes the bearer of the work, or refuses. The artistic imagination goes beyond what is seen and visible on the surface and symbolically brings forth the invisible. And through the act of creation, the artist sees more deeply than what is normally seen and symbolizes that vision so that others may see it. Creating art is an incarnational activity that allows the unseen to be seen. Artistic creativity is hopeful and transcendent because it reflects the creative work of God. And this is the reason God sent Jeremiah to the potter's house in Jeremiah 18. It was only when Jeremiah witnessed the molding and reshaping of the spoiled clay vessel into a new vessel that Jeremiah realized God could reshape and recreate the nation of Israel. Art is inherently hopeful because it mirrors God's redemptive and creative acts. The visual arts speak in ways words alone cannot. They have the incarnational capacity to disclose levels of meaning that words alone just do not possess. Visual art is symbolic in nature and can give human emotion, shape, and substance, and communicate on levels beyond the rational and intellectual. And in this way, visual art is able to reach the heart, body, spirit, and soul of humans in ways that fall short for words. There are no words to adequately describe the beauty of seeing the Bruges Madonna in a way that could then evoke the same praise and wonder and joy that comes from actually seeing and experiencing it. It would be like trying to fully appreciate Handel's Messiah by simply reading the notes in the score. We must engage the arts to say and incarnate, to enflesh what the written word alone cannot say. The theological constructs, creation, Imago Dei, and the Incarnation, represent just a few of the theological rationale which affirm and support the inclusion of the visual arts in worship today. And they each attempt to speak in favor of the visual arts and combat artistic apathy in worship. And each one offers a theological insight as to why the visual arts are critical to the life and liturgy of the church. Humanity's unique relationship with God, as those made in God's image, makes deep claims on us to acknowledge and utilize our artistic natures. Since God is the original creator, human creativity is near to the heart of what it means to be made in the image of God. And the church can no longer ignore, avoid, or dismiss the artistic gifts of its members, but rather view them as part of what it means to be made in the image of God. Creation and art are material in nature. They are physical stuff. And God values the goodness of physical stuff because God created it. Because Jesus came to this earth and became flesh rather than staying apart from the world. The material world is validated and affirmed. And through the incarnation of Jesus and his life, death, and resurrection, God is working to make all things new. And the arts play a significant role in new creation because they have the incarnational ability to make the unseen seen and communicate on levels beyond words. Art, innovation, and creativity should be affirmed, encouraged to flourish, and made a high priority in the church. It is time to create a clearing, a broad pathway for visual artists to begin enriching the life of the church through their craft. It is time for a renaissance of the visual arts in worship.